All right, Ramblers, let's ramble. We're back one more time. We have our first three-peat, our first guest. You were tied with Dr. Sunil Dan with two appearances. This is your third. You got the hat trick. Two more, and you get a toaster. We have the amazing Major Tom Haviland with us today. Let's go gallery. How are you? How are you, Major?
Doing good, Dean. Honored to be tied with Sunil Dan for a number of appearances. Love his work.
I
I
know
watch
he's
his YouTube videos all the time, and the fact that he questions the mainstream science and the folks that have kind of perpetrated what I think is a very sinister plan on us the last 4 or 5 years to tell us a certain vaccine was safe and effective when I believe it's neither, based upon the data that's come in over the last 4 or 5 years. In fact, I just watched or just saw an email come out about a recent interview that Edward Dow did. He's looking at this from a completely different angle, death and disability insurance industry data. And he says the insurance industry data is showing 3,000 to 5,000 extra deaths per week in the United States. Yeah, due to the COVID vaccines. So this is, so over a 50-week, 52-week year, that would be 250,000. If you go with the high number, 5,000 would be 250, 260,000 extra deaths per year due to the COVID-19 vaccine. And that actually mirrors what has been reported in terms of excess mortality.
exact. I was just about to say, is that
It
those
jives.
numbers
It
like, yeah,
jives.
okay,
Yeah.
it does, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
And also the federal statistics on disability, for example, that number used to be about 30 million a year of people of working age that were permanently disabled. That number is now 35 million. So 5 million extra Americans are now permanently disabled of working age. So again, that jives with all the insurance industry data that Ed's looking at. And of course, it also jives with what we're seeing with these white fibrous clots, right? Refresh your audience. This is what I've
Yeah,
been tracking
show
the
us.
last 4 years.
Do you have the
And
long
these
one? Do you have one
clots,
of the long ones in front of you?
yeah, I
No?
got the long one
Can you show me
too.
that one? This is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. So
Yeah,
for all of you, you can go back and watch our first two videos when we talked about this, so we don't have to recap it all. But these are what embalmers are finding in bodies when they're doing the embalming process at funeral homes, right?
correct. Yeah, as they're trying to get the blood out and put the formaldehyde in so they can preserve the body for a viewing, before a funeral, before the casket's closed and the loved one's buried. They've been finding these clots, and what's shocking is they're finding them in my latest 2024 worldwide embalmer blood clot survey. They're finding these in 27% of their corpses. One out of every four dead bodies has these. So this is not a rare phenomenon. These things are quite prevalent. But we
Yeah.
caught a big break, Dean, during the running of that 2024 survey last December. The president of the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association, Mr. Taylor Moore, reached out to me and said, "Hey, Tom, I'd love to have you come speak to our embalmers and funeral directors at our upcoming 2025 annual convention just south of Nashville, Tennessee." So on June 8th, a little more than a month ago, I actually traveled to Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, and did give a hour speech to these embalmers and funeral directors at their annual convention.
What was that
And guess
convention
what?
called? I think it was
It
did
was the
it
Tennessee Funeral
was it
Directors
called the Tennessee?
Association.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not the one that I
And
saw you in the video, right? The red pill one.
no, that's different.
That's a
Yeah.
different one. Okay, those were
That's
a
a
different
different,
set
yeah.
of embalmers.
No, those were actually just regular old folks at a what's
Okay.
called a red pill expo.
Okay.
People who
Okay.
were awake,
I get it.
basically.
Okay.
But at this Tennessee Funeral Directors Association convention that I went to, I did capture video footage of 18 of the 28 embalmers that were in the room that day, raising with raised hands, saying they are indeed seeing these white fibrous clots in their corpses. So this is a huge deal. This is the first time the United States State Funeral Director Association has officially acknowledged the existence of these clots, and also the fact that they're prevalent. Because I actually ran a paper survey there that same day on June the 8th, and we'll go through the results of that survey if you want to, and we'll talk about what the Tennessee embalmer said they were seeing.
Yeah, I
So
saw. Okay, so I did see that. I think you showed that on Redacted. I think a portion of that.
yes,
When you were asking them to put their hands up if they did embalming and keep their hands up if they seen it, I mean, most of them kept their hands up. And
Right.
I asked, went to a funeral recently, a family member, and I asked the embalmer, I said, could you please tell me if you find any white blood clots? The person had only been vaccinated once. They didn't, but he did say, but I've been seeing them since the beginning of COVID. So that was, he
Oh,
said it
wow.
openly too, like it was no big deal. There was nothing associated with a statement. It was just like, yeah, but I've been seeing them since COVID started. And it was like, that's the end of the conversation.
Well,
It's
it would have
sunny
been
out.
nice. Yeah, it would have been nice if you would have come out and said, and I reported that to people, right?
Yeah.
Because as you and I know, only a few embalmers, like Richard Hirschman from Alabama, John O'Looney from over in the UK, Miss Laura Jeffries from Canada. There were only 6 or 7 that came out in that Died Suddenly movie and said publicly they were seeing these clots. When, as you and I know, a lot of the embalmers were definitely seeing these things,
Yeah.
but they were staying silent about it,
Exactly.
as well as doctors. And to me, it's a sin because if you're seeing something this unusual, because we know these white fibrous clots are killing people, they're causing strokes and heart attacks, they should have an obligation to speak out about it and say, "Hey, we're seeing something unusual we've never seen before prior to COVID and the vaccines." But
Yeah.
unfortunately, they did not come forward. So this problem's persisted for the last 4 years, and we've gotten very little progress with
Yeah.
people like the CDC and the FDA wanting to look into this problem. So it's
Yeah.
all, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's also weird too, just the whole business structure, right? Like, so I'm talking to the embalmer, but he's also organizing the cars,
Yeah,
and he's and
yeah,
he's and he's managing the funeral, and he's there for the 20 grand that the funeral costs, right? I mean, he
yeah.
doesn't care to make a big stink. He's not going to save anybody now. They're all dead. He's
And actually,
figuring,
during COVID, they were incentivized to code the death as COVID. That
right,
not the embalmers, they get
right,
the
right.
bodies,
Yes.
but the coroners, medical examiners, doctors coded these deaths as COVID. Everybody was happy with that because the government was paying $10,000 to $13,000 for the family to do a funeral if the death was coded as COVID. So the family was happy; they're getting the funeral paid for. The funeral home is happy because they know the family's
Wow.
going to pay. So it was a whole corrupt system set up to encourage people to code deaths as COVID as opposed to COVID vaccine caused.
Yeah, there was a lot of people were hearing a lot of stories of, somebody died in a car crash and but they had COVID, and all of a sudden there's a COVID related death. So a lot of that was going on, and people wondering why are they doing this? And I think that there was more than one reason. And I think you just basically highlighted another reason. Are you finding less resistance now compared to when I first interviewed you like a year ago or 8 months
Some, but
ago?
it'll still be interesting when I'm going to run this survey again at the end of this year, November, December. So I'll run a 2025 survey. We'll see how many people respond to it. We send it out to 50 national, regional, and state funeral director associations all over the world, including the top 30 by population here in the U.S., which includes a lot of blue states and red states. Blue states like California, Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, but then red states like Ohio, Texas,
Right.
Florida. So I try to get a mix from both red and blue states, but and then also overseas funeral director associations as well. And each of those have hundreds of members under them, right? So theoretically, we should be getting thousands of responses from embalmers in those 50 funeral director associations. And then I also send it to over 1,700 funeral homes around the world in major cities
Okay.
directly. So, we should receive around 5,000 responses to these surveys we've been sending out the last 3 years. However, as you know, in my latest survey, we only had 301 responses.
Wow.
Still enough to say, hey, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Like 250 of the 301 in the last survey said they were indeed seeing the clots. That's
Yeah.
83% of the callers. But, I would love to have a lot larger sample size because then we could check for things like regionality. We can see if certain sections of the world
Exactly.
are having problems with the clots more than others, you know.
Yeah. I mean,
But
and that's the one thing I was wondering was, yeah, and by the way, how long does it take to fill out the survey?
about 3 or 4 minutes,
So
about
there's
10
no
questions.
excuse, right?
No, there's
There's no
no excuse.
excuse. Okay.
No excuse.
So one of the things I was thinking of, so when you see that, 80% of the embalmers put up their hand, and then you see a minority that don't put up their hand, immediately I'm like, well, where the hell are these people living that they haven't seen it once? To me, that's just as shocking. So I want to know, where is the area or maybe it's not an area. Maybe it's a pocket. Is there something cultural going on? Is there something politically going on? How is it that, a small portion of these embalmers haven't seen them? What is going on that they haven't seen them?
That is strange, isn't
That's
it?
strange.
And Richard Hirschman cannot explain it. He's a trade embalmer. He embalms well over 300 bodies per year. And Richard's actually seen the clot still in 2025 in about 50% of his corpses. And so it's beyond him as how other embalmers around the world have not come across
Right.
this.
It's
So,
shocking to me.
yeah.
Unless
But
they're
like I
not.
said, there's only 17% of them now. The 83% said, yeah, we are seeing them. So the majority are at least admitting that they're seeing them.
Yeah.
Now, some people, I never want to accuse anybody of lying, right? I take the information I get from these surveys and I report it as is, but people I can see are set in their ways in terms of some of their attitudes. Because even though we never mention the words COVID or COVID vaccine in any of these embalmer surveys we do, a lot of the embalmers in our comment section, they talk about the vaccines, either implicating them as the cause of these
Sure.
clots, which is the majority of them,
Yeah.
or there's a few still that defend the vaccines as not causing the clots.
Okay.
In fact, let me read to you
By the way, how is an embalmer qualified to make that statement?
they really are not,
They're not.
because they are just preparing the body for a funeral, so
That's
they're
it.
not scientists, right?
Yeah.
So in fact, we don't ask questions in the survey. We just ask you, what are you seeing? When did you see it?
Right.
What percentage of your corpses are you seeing this? And questions they are qualified to answer. But obviously, people are going to speculate because they know
Sure.
something different happened in 2020 and 2021, right? The virus came around in 2020, and then the jab started in 2021, and that's when they started seeing this phenomenon. So they're putting two and two together and talking about it. Here's one of the responses we got from a embalmer in Canada who, well, I'll read it and then it'll be obvious what his attitude is.
Okay.
He says, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, which I assume this survey is pertaining to, I have not noticed any clots, fibrous structures, or contents in the blood outside of the ordinary. It is also not our responsibility as embalmers to take note of these cases, record or share any information, as it is confidential medical information that breaches the privacy that we have with our client families. Videos and articles such as died suddenly or anti-vaccine, COVID-denying propaganda that is based in no actual fact other than to spread right-wing beliefs and fear-mongering the public. Remember, I never mentioned COVID or the vaccines in any of the questions, but this guy obviously had his own attitude,
because
right?
they've got their guns loaded and cocked. They're ready to go. It's a knee-jerk reaction. You can't, and this is what I was about to ask you earlier. When I ask you kind of resistance have you been getting, have you gotten anything that you consider over the line? Like, have you gotten John Campbell or Peter McCullough style pushback yet? Or so far they've been
No, I think
laid
they're
off
using
you,
the tactic of ignoring me more than
ignoring you right now? Okay.
ignoring,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're hoping this just doesn't get
Yeah.
mainstream real wide. So I've been trying like the devil to get on shows like Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Megan Kelly. Megan's been vaccine injured herself. Her booker, her producer, sent me an email back a week or so ago saying, we're just not interested in having you on at this time, Tom. And it flabbergasted me because this is an opportunity for Megan to get back at Big Pharma for what they did to her. But and
I know.
the evidence we have is overwhelming. We have visual evidence of the clots. We have microscopic evidence of the clots too, in terms of and we can show that later on if you want to. Basically
You can show anything you want. If you want to pop it up, go ahead.
yeah. Let's see if I can bring that up right now.
I don't know how to do it, but if you know how to do it.
See if I do a share here.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to turn on. Do you know how to turn on sharing?
I have share here. I just pushed it.
Okay,
But nothing happened. So
let me see it.
multiple participants can share simultaneously. There you go. I just put that up.
Let me see if I can do it now.
See if it works.
Looks like I did. Okay, let's go. Let's try this.
Dr. Haviland has started screen sharing. There's your Zoom.
Okay, hold on. Let me let this bar clear here, and then I'll go to.
I'm just going to pause the recording until we get it up. Oh, there you go. You got it up.
You got
Human
it?
plasma.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. This is a great picture, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, what this is a photo of, this is a photo out of a peer-reviewed paper that appeared in Nature magazine last August of 2024. And it was a paper done by Ryu and colleagues, RYU and colleagues. And in that paper, there's this figure one, and there's this image in there. And what you see on the left there is our normal blood clotting protein, fibrinogen, uh, and it's in a liquid form in our blood plasma. But whenever there's damage done to the endothelial lining, the inner walls of our veins and arteries, it triggers the clotting response. Say you get a cut on your arm,
Right,
so then
right.
it triggers the clotting response, and that liquid fibrinogen turns into a white solid called fibrin, and that's what it looks like on the left, like these nice cooked spaghetti noodles, nice and
Hmm.
smooth, and they form kind of a net, and they collect your red blood cells and your platelets, and they form a clot at the site of the wound. So then, as soon as that cut is healed and the wound no longer exists, then we have another enzyme called plasmin that comes along and it attaches to that nice smooth spaghetti and it breaks down the clot, and then you're good to go again. But look what on the right, look what happens when our fibrinogen comes in contact with the spike protein, either from the COVID virus or from the COVID
Right.
vaccine. It becomes this twisted, misfolded mess, these nasty nodules on it, and then it becomes difficult for our natural enzyme plasmin to break that down. So then the clots tend to grow and persist, and they become these large white fibrous clots. So let me go over here to the next image. Richard Hirschman, our embalmer from Alabama, sent about a dozen samples of the white fibrous clots that he took out of cadavers, some of them in what's called formalin, which is a form of formaldehyde, others under actually argon gas, which is an inert gas, to make sure that the no chemical reaction was happening with the preserved sample. He sent those to a Dr. Kevin McCarran, who's a neuroscientist in Japan. And Kevin has a scanning electron microscope and took a 5 micrometer slice, very thin slice of one of Richard's embalmer's clots, and looked at it under a scanning electron microscope at a very high magnification of 5,000. See what he sees there, Dean?
Yeah.
He's What's that look like? Does it look more like the nice smooth
No,
spaghetti,
I
or does it look
mean
more like the
they're all
misfolded
lumpy and they look like
Yeah,
you've taken calamari and actually put it in flour
exactly.
and then
So
lumped
it's
it in.
it's it's your fibrinogen in contact binding with the spike protein, either from the virus or from the vaccine.
Yeah,
And then if
and by the way, that's I want to allude to that for a second
yeah,
because the message you got from that embalmer was kind of nasty, right? But you've acknowledged from day one that these came about before the vaccine. You're not suggesting that this is only the vaccine. You've never suggested that from day one, have you?
that's correct. That's correct. We believe it's caused by the spike protein, and
Right.
as we know, there's a spike protein on the surface of the virus. So it is
Right.
possible for the virus itself and the spike protein from the virus to cause these white fibrous clots. It's probably a lot less likely to remember that it has to make its way into your bloodstream.
Right.
Most of the virus resides up in your nose, your head, into your lungs, and usually does not get past your what's called mucosal membrane to get inside of your body. So that's where most of the virus, is contained. Unfortunately, the vaccine's a different story, right? It gets
Right.
injected
Exactly.
directly inside you. It bypasses the mucosal membrane. Those lipid nanoparticles carry the mRNA all over the body, and it sets up shop and starts producing spike protein throughout the body. And as we know, it can do that indefinitely. There's a paper out that's shown it being done for over 700 days, still finding spike
Jesus.
protein produced by the vaccine. Yeah, that was only supposed to last 2 days to a week in
All
your
right.
body and then go away. But unfortunately,
That was
because
the
of the
claim.
yeah, the methyl pseudouridine that they replaced on the as part of the code for the modified RNA that they put into the vaccine, it's extended the life of that mRNA possibly indefinitely. Dr. Peter McCullough believes. So there's that the result of that is much more of the spike protein is getting into your system due to the vaccine, not the virus, and for a much longer period of time. This last photograph here is just what the embalmer clot looks like. That thin slice. When you back it out, instead of 5,000 times, if you look at it at 1,000 time magnification, look at that mess.
Yeah.
There's no wonder our plasmin cannot attach to that and break down the clot, right? So then what you get then is this, these horrible, this is the result, right?
There it
It's
is.
keep growing and persisting until they become
Yeah, and they're
non-stable.
pulling. I mean, we were talking about this in the first time we did the interview. Some of the ones they were pulling out of that big artery in the leg. Like some of them were like as long as the leg.
Yeah, it's just, and they've never seen anything like this before. It's just
Yeah.
horrific. It's
Yeah.
a so, but they've
It,
done a good job of keeping a lid on it from the general
you,
public for the last 4 years. That's what's really strange
yeah,
about it.
they've
Yeah.
tried, but the good news, and one of the reasons why we're here today, is you've been getting on some really good platforms. So, the first one, you were on Dr. John Campbell. And for
Yes.
those of you, Dr. John Campbell at the beginning of COVID was just asking questions and looking at data as it was coming in, looking
He
at
was actually
every.
pushing the vaccines,
He
Dean, at
was at
the
the beginning,
beginning.
yes.
Yes.
With the data that was available, he made a decision, and as new data came in, he changed his mind. So was that must experience must have been nice because he seems like a genuinely, really honorable, decent human being.
Absolutely. And like you say, he followed the data, and he had the courage to say that he had made a mistake, and by supporting the vaccines at the beginning. And he regrets, he got the shots
Yeah,
himself, and he regrets getting the shots. But it takes a man of integrity and courage to admit that he was wrong, and then do a
absolutely.
180, yeah, based upon, and like you say, it was based on new information. As information came in, he
As it was
followed it
coming in.
logically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he was doing a
exactly.
great, and I think this is the reason why people loved him, is because he would take it, the paper, and he would go through it and he would explain it in a way that most people could understand. But as soon as his numbers and his views started getting a little too big, we had to slap that guy down, right? So, all of a
Yeah.
sudden he was getting, not demonetized, but there were a couple of his videos were taken down. But
I
thank
think
God
the
for
ones I did
people
with
like
them,
him.
yeah, I did one with them was about 2 million views, and I think that one did get
Oh,
demonetized. It's
really?
actually still available. You can still see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, that cost him some money, right? Because
Yeah. What a joke. And then you went on one of my heroes, Jimmy Dore. What was that like?
I had actually for a couple of years tried to get on Jimmy's show. In fact,
Right.
I had attended a couple of his stand-up
Right. So did I in
appearances. He
Toronto.
was
Yeah.
he was in Indianapolis last year, and I went to that show. Then this year, I went to one that was actually right in my hometown of Dayton, Ohio. So I finally got on Jimmy's show. That was good, and he has a different perspective, a different audience because
Yeah.
he's a comedian.
Right.
But Jimmy's been injured himself by the
Right.
by the vaccine. He has some nerve damage in his neck, and
Yeah. He's actually
so
part of a study, an actual study. He became part of an
yeah.
actual study for COVID damage.
So it was refreshing to get on Jimmy's
Oh,
show. And then, as you know, I was also on with Clayton and Natalie Morris
I
on
saw and
Redacted.
redacted
Well,
as well. So you're
yeah.
you're everywhere now. So
Well, Clayton's
that's
been
awesome.
terrific. He's had me on about 4 or 5 times on the
Okay.
show. He's, and what's really bizarre about that is not this last appearance, but the one before that, after I had gone on Clayton's show, about a month or two later, he was invited to be a guest on Tucker Carlson's
Mm.
show at the
Yes.
cabin. And he went on with Tucker, and he did about an hour and a half interview with Tucker. And twice during that interview, he mentions the white fibrous clots to
Right. Right.
Tucker. And as you and I know, I actually gave
There they
Tucker a
are.
vial of these, and he gave
Right. You
another
did.
one to
Yes.
his producer Samantha when I met them both at Hershey, Pennsylvania last September. But Tucker acted in that interview like he had never heard of the clots before. He didn't say,
Right.
"Oh, yeah, I know all about the clots because I've got
Yeah. Who knows? Right.
vials." So it's bizarre, this unusual reluctance from some of our media superstars on the right not to want to talk about this. I expect it from
Yeah.
ABC, NBC, CBS,
Sure. Oh, of
CNN,
course.
and Fox. They're all sponsored by big pharma,
Of course. Yeah.
but these independent people on the right, you would think that they would be more apt to want to come out and talk about this, except for one thing. Maybe they don't want to lose access to Trump, and they know that if they do anything to talk about this, it could be criticizing Operation Warp Speed, right? Because we're
Yeah.
showing the negative result of the vaccines coming out.
Absolutely. And you
So
you said something that I found curious when you were at CPAC. The last interview you did, I said, "Hey, I want to know about your CPAC, Considerable Political Action Conference, whatever it stands
yeah,
for." And you said that they were like, you know what? Maybe you should tone it down or get the hell out of here,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
They didn't, they
And
didn't
that's
like me showing. Yeah,
no. And Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the very first interview I did, he basically said, there really hasn't been a rhyme or reason to the ideology and the reaction to COVID. He said there were some conservative states that were, very oppressive. And of course, there were some liberal ones. And he found that there was a lot of inconsistencies in ideology. And I think we're making too much of a big deal. Well, I'm not, but people that don't want to listen to you, they're making a big deal out of us by saying, well, this is a right wing talking point. So
Yeah, and it's wrong.
maybe
This is a bipartisan issue, right?
exactly
These
like
clots
Jimmy
are,
Dore is not a conservative,
yeah, they don't
right?
care if you're a Democrat or
Exactly.
Republican. These clots will be
Exactly.
in you,
Yeah. And
regardless of what your
it's
political
sad, right?
opinion.
It's really, really sad that's what it's become, because what you're going to see is people on the right just saying, you know what, this is a little too creepy. Maybe people are going to think this is too weird and maybe it'll set us back. But you're just asking questions. Like you're literally just asking questions. You're not really
Yeah.
making many claims. You're asking as many embalmers as you can. Please give us the information that you have so we can move forward, maybe.
And as you know, I also tried with doctors as well because I had last March, I had a cath lab whistleblower come forward. It was a cardiologist and endovascular specialist in Jacksonville, Florida. His name is Dr. Mahana Basharat. And he came forward to me. He was actually introduced to me by a colleague of his, a OBGYN, Dr. Dan McDyer. And he started to come forward, and he was going to come forward publicly and talk about the fact that he's been removing these same white fibrous clots from living people for the last 4 years in his catheterization lab, where they use very flexible catheters to either suck the clot out, scrape it out, or lasso it and pull it out. But then about a month after I made contact with him, he went dark on me. He sent me a final email saying, I've been instructed to terminate communications immediately. Sorry for the inconvenience. So somebody got to him,
Yeah.
probably an administrator of his hospital, said, hey, we don't want you talking about this at all to anybody.
I'm
So
not
it's
surprised.
sad. So, but as you know, Dean, I tried to run a cath
Yeah.
lab workers blood clot survey similar to the ones that I ran with the embalmers. And this time I actually added questions about the COVID vaccine because unlike the embalmers, these doctors, they do have access to the COVID vaccination records of all their patients. They
Right.
can tell you how many shots they took, when they took their shot, what brand they took. And I sent that off to the societies for vascular surgery in the United States, Canada, UK, and Australia and New Zealand, as well as to 120 vascular surgeons all across the United States directly. Guess how many responses I got to that survey?
15%?
Zero. Zero.
Zero.
None.
None.
Yeah, the U.S. Society for Vascular Surgery sent me back an email declining to take the survey. They're headquartered in Rosemont, Illinois, and on their website, they brag on having over 6,300 member vascular surgeons all across the United States.
Wow.
They refused to take the survey. And they could have told us, hey, when we're finding the white fibrous clots, it is in only the vaccinated people.
They could take, yeah, they could.
they could draw the correlation, unlike the embalmers, who don't usually have access to that, whether the person's been jabbed or not, the deceased. Unless the family of the deceased volunteers that information, the embalmers and funeral directors usually don't know. But
We're
so they,
actively suppressing information. We need more
yeah.
information and we're suppressing information.
And part of the rationale is, okay, we don't want to take the survey that's provided by this retired U.S. Air Force major.
Sure.
Okay, well, fair enough. Why don't you do your own survey?
Exactly.
Right? Why didn't the CDC and the FDA survey these vascular surgery societies and these state funeral director associations? They're not doing it. You can't find a problem, Dean, if you don't go looking for it.
No, and we do every day. We look, I mean, we measure, we look, we observe trivial little things every day in the world of science. We look for things to observe because people are running out of things to do theses on, right? And their master's programs. Like here it is. Here's stuff that right now, like, thousands of potential master's students could right now go out and study this.
Yes. I mean, there's
right now
all these universities all over the world with millions of dollars in their budget to work with. Right. They could be getting their own samples of embalmers' clots and looking at the clots, analyzing them to see if they're coming to the same conclusions about that the scientific team that Richard Hirschman and I have been in touch with. They could perform these tests. They're called ICP-MS, HPLC, which is high performance liquid chromatography analysis, thioflavin T testing, RT quick testing, looking at these things under scanning electron microscopes like our team has been doing. They could perform all these same tests to either confirm or refute what the small team of scientists that I'm working with are doing it on their own dime, on their own budget. So there's no reason they refute, these universities, they get grants, right, from the federal government.
Nobody wants to touch this.
Yeah, they don't want their grants money shut off.
Exactly. Exactly. Nobody wants to touch us. Even years later, when it's funny because you see even people that were vaccinated and people that were arguing against the unvaccinated, they're not actually vocal right now. They're just kind of quiet and they're like, this is a boring topic. Nobody wants what clots,
Yeah,
passe. Let's move
everybody
on.
wants to move on, but yeah,
We
I
want to
I
move on
think
because they're on the wrong side of history. When you're on the wrong side of history, you want to move on, right? If you were on the wrong side of the Iraq war claiming WMDs, then you move on. You don't want to talk about it anymore.
right, and we're
Quite
suffering a lot
sad.
from that one. The problem with that is right if the problem is persisting, if the clots are still in 27% of corpses, and people are still keeling over, dying suddenly, and the shots are still on the market for kids 6 months in a year olds and above, you know what I mean? We've got
Yeah.
and the big pharma's not stopping. They want to use the same technology, mRNA.
No. If we
We're
found out
living
that Coca Cola gave you cancer, we're not taking Coca Cola off the market. Be
you
honest,
know,
right?
Peter McCullough, he laments about this. And he says, back when they were arguing over whether cigarette smoking caused lung cancer or not,
Mm.
it took 30 or 40 years for them to convince the doctors that, because doctors were smoking. They were recommending certain brands of
Exactly.
cigarettes.
There's
And 30 or
there's a
40,
great scene in Mad Men where the pregnant woman, is in his doctor's office, and he lights up a cig to tell her that she's pregnant. And and my young friends are like, okay, that's not true, right? And I'm like, that's absolutely true. We used to
yeah.
smoke on airplanes. It is absolutely true that doctors would smoke cigarettes, and in fact, during Prohibition, doctors gave prescriptions for alcohol,
It's
and they actually
amazing, isn't it?
and they would actually make money off the prescriptions.
So Dr. McCullough thinks it may take 20 or 30
That's
years before we
crazy.
finally get to the truth about these mRNA vaccines, which
And what
is
does he know,
horrible.
right? He's only
Yeah.
been right about everything.
Yeah, he's been right about almost everything, I
About almost
believe.
everything, he's been right. Like
Yes, he
he
has.
was on Joe Rogan making predictions, saying this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen to the virus. It's going to do this, and then it's going to do that, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 months later, there's Omicron, and it worked out exactly the way he said.
Yeah.
All right, and he
But
predicted it.
the thing is, I think it's affecting many Americans' lives. A lot of people know somebody within their own family or circle of friends they either suspect or know has been, either injured or killed by the jabs. So it's going to become a very, if it's not already, it's going to become a very important point going forward in the future because it's unavoidable at this point. The
Yeah,
damage is so great. And remember, we're just talking about one of the side effects. Right? I mean, there's also miscarriages,
right. We're
terminal
just talking about one, right?
cancers, nerve damage,
Yeah,
myocarditis. These
myocarditis.
shots, yeah, they've been doing a number on people in many different ways. So, but
And
one of
one
the
of
things
the go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say at the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association convention back on June the 8th, I actually took a paper survey that day with the embalmers. I said, hey, I've got them in the room here. This is great, right? Plus, I was curious. I wanted to know what's happening in the first half of 2025. So these 28 embalmers are kind of our canaries in the coal mine for what's happening so far
Right.
this year. So let me share with you the results I got from this little paper survey I took. I'll share that. Let this thing drop a second, and I'll move to this other presentation.
You're a busy man, Major.
Can you see that?
Yep. Tennessee funeral directors.
Yeah. So I did the survey on, and like what did, Dean, is I had just a box, and I handed out paper surveys. They took the paper survey, and then that night after I had given my presentation, I opened the box and just counted the surveys up, and this is what I found. First question I asked is, what's your current position? Of the 28 that were in the room, three of them were funeral directors only. They don't do any embalming.
Okay.
Three of them were active embalmers. They don't do any funeral directing. But then there were 22 of them that do actually both funeral
Okay.
directing and are active embalming.
Okay. So we got
This did not
25.
surprise me. Yeah, because
All right.
Richard Hirschman told me that when they go to mortuary school to pick up their degrees, the classes overlap so much that it's easiest just to pick up your funeral director and
Right.
embalmer degree at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's what they do. So that's good news, right? 25 out of the 28 there are actually doing active
Okay.
embalming. And the other three that are not probably sneak into the embalming room once in a while to see
Once in a
what's
while.
going on. So the next question we asked is, have you seen the white fibrous structures clots during the first half of 2025? As you can see there, 18 of the 28, 64% said, yep, still seeing them the first half of
Still seeing them.
2025. So the next question we ask, of course, is, okay, what percentage of your corpses have these in them? And if you average all the bars together over there on the left, you get an average of 17% of the corpses.
17%.
So one out of every
Wow.
six corpse. Yeah. A little bit down from my 2024
Wow.
worldwide survey where it was 27%.
Yeah.
So this could be a good news in the right direction. Hopefully
Who knows,
this,
right? It's a
yeah,
small sample.
yeah, it's
I
hard
mean,
to
how
tell
many
because it is a small
you've
sample.
you've probably got now responses over the years of what now? Over 1,000 embalmers? Would you say over a
Close to a,
thousand?
yeah,
Close to a
close to a
thousand?
thousand.
I
Yeah,
mean, once you get into 1,000 or 2,000 territory for any kind of polling, for any kind of survey, it's becoming really statistically significant anytime you come
correct.
over a couple thousand, right?
Correct.
These numbers, 17%. Wow.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is if we weren't clandestine about all this and would just be open about all of the information, we could probably then parse down if the 17% are more or less vaccinated. We don't know, right? We don't know
Absolutely.
if it's 3 or 4 shots or one shot.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Dean. We could answer all
We
those
could answer all
questions.
these questions, right?
Yeah, but people are just not willing to share the information, which is sad. One of the new questions we asked, and I'll probably put this in my 2025
Wow.
worldwide survey at the end of this year, is what's the longest white fibrous clot that you've seen removed? See, 9 of them said a white fibrous clot between 1 to 2 inches long. 7 embalmers said a white fibrous clot between 3 to 5 inches long. 5 of them said a clot between 6 to 12 inches long, and there was one that said he's removed a clot that was
Longer than 12
greater than
inches.
12 inches. Yeah, which is like I says, not surprising. Richard's
Yeah.
got one in a tube that's about 19 inches and about a half to 3/4 of
It's
an inch wide.
crazy.
It's huge.
It's funny now because I just went to a funeral lately and I see so many unhealthy people, which is
Yeah,
also probably related to health and the way people eat and their environment. But I see so many people limping on canes. And I'm talking about people in their 30s and 40s. And I'm wondering what's going on in that person. Is there something going on? Is there something in one of their veins or their arteries, or are they just eating poorly? And now it's just another question of poor health that I'm asking and I'm constantly thinking about, but I'm not getting any answers to.
yeah. It's and when these people go to the doctors seem baffled, or
Mm,
the doctors, the last thing the doctor wants to admit is that maybe the vaccine caused that injury in you,
yeah,
right? They're gaslighting a lot of patients, and it's really sad, right?
yeah.
It's sad that so people are not getting good answers from their regular physicians. So we encourage that you go to somebody, a physician who's awake, and
Right, right.
the former FLCCC frontline COVID critical care doctors. They're now called the IMA, I think, Independent Medical Alliance. If you go to their website, they've got you can type in your zip code, and they can point you to a physician that's in your local area who's more awake, who's in tune
Mm,
to possible vaccine injuries.
okay.
So I suggest people go there if they think if they want a honest opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of gaslighting with a lot of people. They're just going into their doctor saying, you know what, I got the jab, and ever since then I don't feel right. And the doctor's like, well, it's not the jab, it's probably this. We'll get you some tests and we'll send you, in Canada, it'll take you a year to get a test or a doctor. So
Oh
it
brother.
just basically they're brushing you off for a year.
Oh man. It's not right.
And what is this slide?
This is another new question we asked. I said, has any family member of the
Hmm.
deceased ever asked you to look for the white fibrous clots in their loved one, or asked if you found the white fibrous clots in their loved one in 2025 or any year prior? And as you see, of the 28 embalmers and funeral directors that answered, only one of them said that a family member's
Right.
ever asked them about the white fibrous clots.
No, it's probably me.
One reason, first of all, they may not know about the clots, right?
Yeah.
We've had a hard time getting information out about this side effect. But then, they could know about them, but be too embarrassed to ask the embalmer to look for them. Also, if there is nothing unusual about the death, there's nothing to be suspicious about, then, they probably won't ask.
Sure.
I think there is that subset, though, Dean, that's in denial.
Yeah.
They know about the existence of the white fibrous clots. They may have a loved one who died in their maybe 30s or 40s from a heart attack or stroke. They may even have encouraged their loved one to take the COVID-19 vaccine. And now they don't want to know the answer to the question because they're
Yeah.
afraid that the embalmer will find the clots, and they might feel guilty if they said, "Hey, I suggested you get the jab," and then that person winds up
Mhm.
dying, stroke or heart attack.
Especially in families where we know people were pressuring each other to either take it or not take it. There's fights in families.
There weren't there?
Yeah.
We had fights in my family. In
Yeah.
fact, I didn't go to one Thanksgiving dinner because my sister insisted,
See?
yeah, that I had to wear a mask and take a COVID test
Yep.
with a little stick up my nose. I said, no,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
Yep. Have you seen evidence of microclotting?
Yeah,
Seven.
in addition to the white fibrous clots, as you know, microclotting has also been an
Yeah.
issue.
The
It's a
coffee
serious one.
ground. They call it coffee grounds because it literally looks like coffee grounds. It's disgusting that it's in your
Exactly.
body.
And it can be just as dangerous as the white fibrous clots because the microclotting occurs at the capillary level, your very small blood vessels, can block the exchange of oxygen at the lungs and then carrying that oxygen to all your major organs of the body, including your brain, your
Right.
eyes. That's why a lot of people might be suffering from brain fog
Right.
or poor vision problems because they have microclotting going on in their head. Well, the embalmers are seeing that. 70% of them are seeing that still in 2025. Now, this is a phenomenon they had seen prior to COVID and the vaccines, but in less than 5% of their corpses,
Okay.
typically in corpses that patients that had heavy chemotherapy when they were living. So this is, as you can see there, the average is 17% of the corpses in 2025 containing the microclotting. So this is at least a tripling of this side
Right.
effect
Prior to
as well.
COVID, less than 5%
Yeah,
prior to
so
COVID.
nasty.
Right.
We then asked a question we asked in our 2023 worldwide survey about infant deaths. We asked, have you
Mm.
noticed an increase in infant deaths either at your funeral home or at your local hospital morgue in 2025 compared to the years 2019 and prior? One funeral director and embalmer could not answer because they weren't embalming back in 2019. They were a newer one. But of the ones that could answer, 11 of them, 39%, said, yep, I'm seeing more infant deaths in 2025 compared to the years 2019 and prior.
And when
So then,
yeah, and they've been pushing baby COVID vaccines for the last 3 years, right?
yeah. And as you know, there's been papers out where they found the spike protein from the vaccine in the woman's placenta.
Yes,
After she
yes.
delivers the child, she delivers the placenta. They found the spike protein there. They've also found the spike protein from the vaccine in mother's breast milk. So this is really unfortunate that it's getting through from the mother into the child. And so the next natural question, of course, is what percentage of increase in infant deaths in 2025 did you see compared to 2019 and prior? Now, this one, if you do not include the green bar, if you just include the blue and the yellow bar, you get an average of a 14% increase in 2025 compared to the pre-COVID years for just those embalmers that saw the increase. So it's still pretty alarming.
Yeah, I mean,
Not,
the first person, coincidentally enough, Dr. John Campbell was the first person who really was all over the excess deaths. Like he was
yeah,
really talking about excess deaths in the UK. And he's like, nobody has an answer for this. And nobody wants to find an answer for this.
yeah.
It
My
was,
wife's from Kenya, Africa, and have a very low jab rate like most of the
right. Yeah.
countries in Africa.
Yeah. And the best
10.
results too.
Yeah, they've had no problems with excess mortality the last 4 or 5 years.
Exactly.
The
Yes.
highly jabbed countries,
Yeah.
it's been 10% plus excess
Yeah.
mortality. So in the United States, for example, about prior to COVID, about 3 million of us died every year. So 10% excess mortality means 10% of 3 million is 300,000 extra Americans dying every
Extra.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, extra
Extra.
on top of the 3 million. So then that's
Right.
3,300,000. So well, people say, well, I don't see that in my own personal life. Well, think about it. At the individual level, it's very subtle. If
You only have to see one person die out of 100, but a lot of people don't even know 100 people.
right, so yeah, if you know in your circle of friends, 10 people died last year, and you see 11 people die this year, well, that's 10%
That's
excess
10%.
mortality. 11 versus 10. But are you really going to notice 11 people dying this year versus 10 last year?
Nope.
It's going to feel the same. That's why it's
Exactly.
so subtle at the individual level. But when you aggregate these numbers up into huge populations, you get 300,000 extra Americans dying every year.
That's why we need transparency.
Right. And that's what Ed Dowd, like I said, his death and disability data from the insurance companies is showing this blatantly. And what's surprising to me, Dean, is the fact that the insurance companies have not been suing Big Pharma because their profit line is getting decimated. Because
So
they wrote all these policies for 20, 30, and 40-year-olds, expecting that they never have to pay
right,
off. And
that's
now
the
they're paying off.
actuarialists are going crazy. They're
Yeah,
pulling their hair out.
exactly, exactly. And that's shown on this slide here. We asked a similar question to what we asked in our 2023 worldwide survey about what age groups are being affected. As you can see there, the good news is the younger age groups, the embalmer said they haven't seen much of an increase in clotting in those groups. But then look at that 36 to 50-year-old bar. Nine of
Yeah.
the embalmers of Tennessee, and that's when it got long in our 2023 worldwide survey as well. And you usually don't consider 36 to 50-year-olds having heart attacks and strokes at that age, right? Usually that doesn't start to you in their late 50s,
Right.
early 60s. So there's something definitely going on here. And this dovetails perfectly with Dowd's work. When he looked at the death and disability insurance data, he saw a tremendous spike of about 40% in death and disability starting in the third quarter of 2021, which is when the Joe Biden mandated the vaccines on the U.S. military, government, civilians, and
Yes.
contractors. And he also tried to mandate it on any company with more than 100 employees. Now, that eventually got shot down by our Supreme Court, but a lot of companies acted preemptively and they made their employees get
Yes.
shots anyways. So
They were
it's,
being good
yes.
employers.
So and that 40% spike in death and disability, like I said, Ed saw it and it was shocking. He said this is like a one in a million year event.
Yeah.
It was way off the Sigma scale. And he just said, obviously something happened here, and that something was the shots were mandated in the third quarter of 2021. And that rise continued for about the next year or so before the numbers started to come down again. So
You said so with regard to the insurance companies. So this is surprising for me to hear. They're actually paying out people that are COVID injured. So are they covering people that are COVID injured or just people that have injuries and it doesn't really matter how they got hurt?
I don't know what they're doing because I think some actually may be denying claims because they're claiming that if you can't prove that the COVID vaccine
Right.
injured you, so I don't know how they're handling a lot of those claims, but I think they are paying a lot of claims.
Yeah, the
And
stories are out there of them playing these claims out, depending on what state you're in, of course, right?
I've seen stories recently about having to raise premiums, so the rest of us are going to
Right.
suffer. Like we're
Exactly.
going to
Yes.
subsidize all
Yes.
those injuries. Our premiums are going to go up.
Of
That's what's going to happen
course.
to us, the general
Of
public.
course.
So.
Are you talking to anybody at the university or research level that's saying, you know what, our department is going to start looking into this, or guess what, I'm putting in for a grant to study these? Nothing. You're not hearing anything.
Crickets,
Crickets.
Dean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've invited all the interviews I do. I invite embalmers, funeral directors, doctors, university people to please contact me at Thomas Haviland at sbcglobal.net. I'm always welcome to hear from somebody to do that kind of a project. But it's been crickets, and it's also crickets, as you know, from the
Uh,
FDA, the CDC,
yeah, they don't give a
NIH.
shit. Well, they got
After
enough.
I, yeah, after I
They've got
get
enough
these,
stuff that they have to backtrack on. The the interesting thing, like I've done now, I don't know, 20 videos, 20 interviews with people and different topics. The one that I got the most people directly messaging me out of like WTF, what the hell is this stuff, was the video that I did with you. That was the first time that I got like 10 people just like being, what the hell is this stuff? Like people are just
yeah,
really concerned. The rest of the
yeah,
time, people just, oh yeah, I saw that video, and then they just move on with their life. This was the first time that people were actually afraid. So it goes to show you that if people actually knew that this was an issue, they would care. People do want to know more.
right,
But
absolutely.
but there's other things with regard to COVID that people, yeah, I've heard, yeah, people got this, or yeah, there's jab this, and yeah, some people are getting hurt, and there's this thing called myocarditis. But when it comes to the white blood clots, nobody I know knows about it. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody. When I'll say to somebody, oh, I'm doing an interview with this guy about blah blah blah. They're like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. So nobody knows about this, Major. You're the only one that's talking about this. And really, all you're doing, again, is asking questions and doing your survey. So you have to keep doing this. What's next for you? Are you taking it to the next level, or are you just trying to get more people to respond? What are you doing next?
trying to get more people to respond. I'll do the survey again. I'll keep doing it, for the foreseeable future because the FDA and the CDC are not. So I'll plan on doing another worldwide survey at the end of
Right.
this year. I would love for another one or two or more state funeral director associations to have me come speak at their annual conventions. So because there's got to be other ones out there that know
Sure.
they all know it's happening. Let's put it that
All
way.
right.
You know,
And you don't, I mean, if somebody came along and said, you know what, we're doing this. We're going to basically scour the earth for every piece of information and get to the bottom of this, you would have no problem just saying, fine, good. Somebody's actually finally taking this seriously. It's not like you're
absolutely.
it's not like you're making a career on this.
No, I'm retired.
Because
I would love to
you're
actually get
retired
on
and
with my
frankly nobody
retiring
wants to hear
years.
from you anyways, right? Because they don't
Exactly.
like what you have to say.
I'm a messenger of some very, very bad news. Absolutely. And I would love to be able to retire and just, hit the golf course and not have to worry about doing these surveys anymore.
Meet you
But
out
it's
there.
I got to stay on it though, because the world won't know the prevalence of these things unless I continue to do my survey. Because this is the only, we hear anecdotally from different embalmers,
Sure.
but nobody is collecting the data from all the embalmers or
Right.
trying to like I am. So I've just got to keep on it until it's recognized by the CDC,
Yeah.
FDA, and the universities.
Well, I mean, you are talking to people that get between, that have between half a mil and a mil subscribers, right? That's a big deal. I
Yes.
mean, Dr. John Campbell's, I think he's up to a million subscribers or
Oh,
somewhere around
yes.
there.
Yes. And
Um,
the
but
good
you
news
got to
is like
you got to get you to that next level of 20, 30, 40 million subscribers. And so
right.
people could just ask questions, not to fall in love with you but just basically just say, there's information out there. We need to get it.
And the beauty is, I've named names all along the way. Mr. Woody Wilson from the Ohio Embalmers Association. He's the president, and he has sent me an email saying that he's seeing the clots. He's the one that got me involved in this in the first place. And then so he's a well-respected gentleman in the industry. He's the president of the Ohio Embalmers Association. Mr. Kevin Swire, who's the president of the Manitoba, Canada Funeral Service
Okay.
Association. Kevin's seen them too, and I've got email proof from Kevin.
Okay. Good.
Mr. Chris Calvi Jr. from the Pennsylvania Funeral Directors Association has seen clots as well. In fact, he sent me an email last November saying, Tom, I'm having problem and almost all my corpses getting fluid formaldehyde from the elbow down into the hands
Wow.
because of blockage.
Is it
Yeah,
taking them longer because of this to do
yeah,
the
yeah.
procedure?
Typical embalming used to take about an hour and a half to do. Now it's about 2.5 hours when they run into a clot body that's riddled with clots.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
have to keep stopping
You got
to
to keep
take the
stopping.
clot, and they have to use multiple injection site points. They may start in the carotid artery,
Yeah.
in the neck, but then they may have to go to the iliac artery down in the pelvis,
Pass
under the
out.
armpits, different places to get the fluid in. So also, of course, Mr. Taylor Moore, the president of the Tennessee Funeral Directors
Okay.
Association, he's no longer the president. Actually, at that meeting that I went to where I spoke, they were electing new officers. So now he's the ex-president of the Tennessee Funeral
Okay.
Directors Association.
Anybody in
And I can,
Ontario?
what's that? Anybody
Anybody
in
in
Ontario?
Ontario want to
Nobody
talk
in
to you?
Ontario. Nobody has been able.
We're an
I've tried.
establishment province. We are
Yeah.
an establishment province. We do not buck trends here.
Uh, And what's one of the funny things is very early on, I'm sure you saw the articles about there was a whole cluster of Toronto doctors that passed away shortly after they got their COVID jabs. Do you remember that in the news?
Vaguely,
It was like
yeah,
20 some doctors, in the general Toronto area.
which is
And
statistically impossible. That just
yeah,
$20 doctors just drop in a
so
certain
it was
period of
to
time.
me it was quite evident. Yeah, they had all gotten their COVID jabs within close proximity of each other, maybe out of the same bad batch.
I was about to say, because we also found out that some people weren't getting the same batch as other people, right? We
That's
knew
right.
that
Pfizer
was happening.
they actually had their own special batch for their own employees.
Exactly. Exactly. And we know that now. This is what bothers me is you say stuff like this, but oh, that's conspiracy. Like, no, this is actual stuff. People said this. You can go check out the receipts.
Yeah, yeah. It is troubling. And then, of course, in addition to the funeral directors and embalmers, we have, like I said, Dr. Dan McDyer from Florida, the OBGYN, and his colleague, Dr. Mahana Basharat, confirming that these white fibrous clots have been in the living for the last 4 years.
Exactly. Once you
And
find them in the living, there's no excuse.
So there's no reason the CDC and the FDA can't go ask these people themselves, right? Or even you
Yeah.
could even bring those people before Congress to testify. Say, yeah, I've been seeing this phenomenon that
Yeah.
I've never seen before the years of 2020
Yeah.
and 2021 in people.
Has the NIH
So
director um talked about
Jay
it at all?
Bradshaw,
Yeah, or does he have enough going on?
Jay has not responded to any of my
Okay.
emails,
Well, he is
unfortunately.
busy now.
Yeah, I know he
I
is. He is.
his old Stanford email, he doesn't even respond anymore. I can see why.
Yeah. And neither does Marty Macri, the new head of the FDA,
Yeah.
or Bobby Kennedy, the HHS.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get email responses from. Now, I sent emails to them, and I also CC along the way a whole bunch of other people like Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr.
Right.
Pierre Corey, Dr. Robert Malone, Ryan
Yeah.
Cole, plus
I
some
can't get Malone or the other one you mentioned, not McCullough, the one after you mentioned
Corey, Ryan,
Dr.
Pierre
Corey.
Corey.
I can't. Yeah, you won't respond to my emails.
Oh,
I'd love to talk to him. He's so
yeah.
interesting. And
I can
Malone, of
send
course. I
an
mean,
email
he's
to Pierre and see if he will
yeah. Could you
interview.
say, hey, there's this, there's this teacher, blah blah blah, and the reason why I started all this was because I found it disgusting that they immediately during their COVID protocols started attacking the young people. And we know that that is the healthiest demographic on the planet. They're indestructible unless they're either drunk in a car or get some rare disease. Young people, college students, they are indestructible pretty much, right? And to get them to take something when their death rate, the mortality rate was so low was disgusting to me. So the whole reason I'm doing this is everybody says, well, we lie to children, college kids, and everybody lies to them. Everybody lies to them. Well, here's your chance. Here's, you know, Dr. Peter McCullough said, yeah, I love talking to kids. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, yeah, I'll talk to college students. I love it because by the time they're adults in the establishment world with jobs and kids and jobs that you can't get fired for because then you can't provide for your children, which is what happened at my college, right? A lot of people got the job because they didn't want to get fired because they had children.
Yeah.
So
And
we
it,
need to
it
talk to this
disgusted me.
demographic.
Yeah, and it disgusted me too, Dean, because a good society, the elderly are supposed to sacrifice for the youth, not the other way
Yeah.
around. And to ask the
Right.
young to take an experimental
Yes.
drug to try to protect grandma
Yes.
and grandpa
Right.
was just immoral to begin with.
Yes. It was
I
immoral.
totally agree with
Yeah.
you.
And the way we treated, by the way, by doing that, we didn't treat the elderly the way we should have treated them.
No,
We
absolutely.
they were our most vulnerable. And what do we say to them? You can't leave the house, can't go for walks, and right? And can't go get fresh food. Where
And
what do we
then
tell? We know that seniors don't get enough exercise and they don't eat enough.
right. And then, if you got sick, wait for a week until
Wait
your
for a week.
oxygen saturation levels got so bad you had to come to the hospital. And then once
Yeah.
you got there, we're going to put you on remdesivir and a ventilator and flip a coin as to whether you live or die. So they denied them early treatment. And then once they got to the hospital, they gave them a crappy protocol. And so it was
Yeah.
almost as if they wanted to kill them.
Right. And you know
I
what?
would
I'm
say
not going to use the word pandemic. I'm not going to use the word conspiracy. I'm not going to say any of that. What I will say though is if we want to avoid this in the future, you need more information, not less information. It's always
bingo.
the case. You need more, not less. And
And a lot of the people that are planning now and talking about what they did right and wrong during the pandemic, they have the absolutely wrong conclusions. They're saying next time this happens, we need to
yes,
get on top of it quicker. We need to do more testing. We need to lock down harder. We need to make people wear masks more. We need to jab them up and get vaccines out more quickly. They come to the exact wrong conclusions
yeah,
as opposed to what they should be saying is no.
you're
This thing,
100% right.
yeah.
You're
Because this virus,
100%
like you
right.
say, it has a 99.7% survival rate, and the average age of death was around 80 years old.
Correct.
It's like the
And
world was born.
by the time Omicron came around, if you went online, because people would get sick, they're like, I don't know what I have. You go online, and if you could look at the chart of comparison between the cold, the flu, and COVID, they were the same symptoms. They were
Exactly.
exactly the same symptoms.
We
So
didn't
why
lock
are you
down
testing
society for the
yourself?
flu. Yeah, we
Yeah,
didn't go. We didn't stop. We
right.
didn't start calling you non-essential
Exactly.
because of the flu.
Yeah. Like
You
when
can stay
people,
at home.
if people ever get food poisoning, right? It's the same as the stomach flu. You're throwing up. Does it
Yeah.
really matter which one it is?
So what
Oh
I did
man.
about it was a few weeks ago, I guess less than a month ago, I was actually asked by G. Edward Griffin. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's an older
No.
gentleman. He's in his 90s
Great
now.
name.
Yeah, yeah. He actually came out in the about the 1960s, and he warned about Marxism marching through the institutions, like our
Mm,
educational system
right.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And he actually wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Have you familiar with that book? That's
No,
the
never
book
heard of it.
about the. It's a book about the how the Fed started here in America. Basically,
Okay.
our whole monetary system,
Okay.
which is
Right.
kind of
Right.
having problems these days,
Yeah.
with fiat currency.
Mm,
So yeah, is a very famous book about the Fed called The Creature from Jekyll Island. So he was astute about, um, like I said, Marxism is, marching through the institute. He asked me earlier in the month to come to an event called the Red Pill Expo, and it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he asked me to speak a little bit about not just the white fibrous clot issue, but about the cover up that you and I are talking about how the embalmers, the funeral directors, the doctors don't want to talk about this, and about how it's been basically because of a lack of courage, right? These people, they're more worried about their paychecks, right, than they are about helping out their fellow man and
yep.
letting them know that this is a problem, right? So that was the tone of the speech I gave at that Red Pill Expo. It was about a 35-minute speech, and I talked about how there were some heroes, like people like Richard Hirschman, who did speak out very early, despite the fact that he was endangering his job as an embalmer, and then John O'Looney, the funeral director over in the UK as well. Dr. Philip McMillan, who runs a really good channel called Vegan Health on YouTube, similar to John Campbell. He's been relentlessly talking about the white fibrous
Good.
clots and trying to get the information out. These are the heroes where there's been way too many cowards, people that have
Yeah.
sat on this information. They knew it's happening, but they sat on it anyways and didn't talk about it. And the result is people continue to take the jabs, people continue to get these clots.
Yeah.
So,
And the people that early on, especially that were making queries and asking questions, were getting kicked off the social media sites, and they were having their Wikipedia pages changed. Is completely
so
disgusting.
Dean, how do you stop that? How do you stop people from being cowards and not speaking out and trying to save their own butt and keep their jobs as opposed to doing what's right?
Well, shaming them doesn't work. Um, Having discussions with them usually doesn't work because they got their back up. I'm pretty pessimistic in that regard. I don't think we can change it, to be honest with you. You need almost like cult of personality, right? You need an individual that can gather enough people, right? That has enough support that can ask the questions. Little people like us, all we can do is convince the people around us in our own little worlds. I can convince some students just to ask questions, right? You can talk to colleagues, you can come on here, but en masse, I'm pessimistic. I don't have an answer for you. I'm pessimistic. I think the powers that be will learn from this and make sure that it's harder for us to get to the truth next time, not easier.
That's what I
Sorry,
worry about
I'm not
too.
giving you an optimistic answer. I don't have it.
No, and your perspective is appreciated because a lot of people think, oh, everything in the future is going to be just
No,
fine. But humanity has this problem not learning from history, right? They tend to repeat it, and that's the problem,
all
right? We
about
go down
power
the
and
same.
control. It's all
What do you
about
think
power and
the
control.
next thing is down the line? Do you think it's going to be like
Oh
central
man.
bank digital currency? Do you think it's going to be 15-minute cities? What other tyranny do the elites have planned for us peons in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it seems. I think they're going to come at us through the educational system, and that seems to be where most indoctrination is concerned. And what I'm seeing is a lot of, especially through the media, is hey, if you really care about your fellow man, you will do this. And
Yeah, the
I see
greater good, right?
exactly, and that kind of messaging is kind of disgusting and creepy. And I'm seeing that. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're going to see a lot less. And this is what I'm seeing the most of, and the thing that I'm most concerned about, because this is my bailiwick. This is my area of where I teach. Civil liberties will be diminished. So your right to silence will be diminished. Your right to every um, uh, search and seizure laws will change. Everything will become watered down with regard to civil liberties for the sake of the greater good. I'm talking about more Canada than the United States because we have a crappy constitution
It's
here. That's
happening here too.
yeah. So it'll happen there too, but at least your constitution is a little bit stronger than ours. Ours is like toilet paper, but that's what I see. The erosion of civil liberties at every level. So making it harder to complain, harder to address petition, harder to find information.
Is respect for life or lack of it, is that part of the equation? Because I noticed recently, like MAID in your country,
Oh,
people they're
so
being
many.
encouraged to suicide, and it's almost like they're devaluing the human individual.
All right. So if I can get this out, I will. If I can't, I can't. So my brother recently passed, and it seemed to me that they were in his last hours that it was like, here, let's just get it over with. Let's just, they weren't giving him, he had no IV in him. They were basically just kept giving him this needle every few hours that was probably some type of morphine that was shutting him down. And within a few hours, basically, he was on his way to death. Whereas just a few hours prior, we were having a conversation and it almost seemed like, yeah, he's on his way out. And that's about it. So you are seeing stories in Canada about a person is getting hurt by the medical system in some cases. And it's like, here's the pamphlet made. I think you guys call it something else, medical assistance. You guys
Right.
have a different name for it. We call it medical assistance in dying, made.
We're seeing a
And
lot of do not resuscitate on
do not
people, people that
resuscitate.
didn't want it. Yeah, we'll see. And it's surprising. There's people in the hospital and they want to stay alive, but for some reason, this do not resuscitate is getting on their chart, and it's just like wow. It's like
Yeah. I,
very
I,
bizarre.
yeah, I mean, your general question, I think that we're devaluing life. And I think that that's been happening over the last few decades, right? I mean, if you see the way government treats us, they don't value life. So that's what sickens me the most when I hear people talking about the government will do this, the government needs to do that. And it's like you're already you've already lost because you're expecting somebody that doesn't care about you to make decisions in your best interest. Why would you think that when they don't care about you? That's not your parent.
I agree. That's why I'm in favor of less government as
Let's,
opposed to more
yeah,
government because I don't see them
yeah,
caring either. They'll say they
yeah,
keep
and
campaigning, but you don't
exactly
see it in true
right,
practice. Exactly.
exactly. Well, on that pessimistic note, we always have great conversation. Nick, is there anything on your plate coming up that we need to pay attention to, or you got any talks coming up? Anything interesting?
Well, first, people can follow my work by going to my wonderful assistant, Laura Kasner, has a free Substack we run with it has all our surveys on it and other articles as well. They can find that at Laura, Laura, Kasner, Kasner
Actually, can you
dot
send that to me
Substack
after, and I'll put it
dot
on.
com.
I'll put it
Yeah.
in the link.
Yeah,
I'll
Laura
also
Kasner
yeah.
dot Substack.com.
I'll also put in the link, the one you gave me, the other talk that you did, and the other links that you went to for people that want to check out Redacted. You got to check out Jimmy Dore just because he's great. And what I
The
like
Red
about
Pill
Jimmy,
Expo. Yeah.
yeah, and the reason why Jimmy is one of my heroes is he's of the left, right? And I'm not ideologically driven, but what I like about him is he always says, "I will work with anyone to do good and no one to do bad," right? So if his
Amen.
issue is, a pointless war in a certain country, he doesn't care if people on the right or the left are coming onto the show to agree with them, right? And
And Jimmy, he lost a lot of friends
he
when
did.
went against COVID and the
Yep,
vaccines. Yeah, a lot of the comedians, just dropped him. So like I say,
exactly.
Jimmy paid a big price for
Yes.
coming out and speaking from the heart about what happened to
Yeah.
him.
I love it. He's a heterodox, and that's what I like. People that don't believe in the orthodoxy and they question everything. That's awesome.
Correct.
So I'm just going to, before you don't go anywhere, I just want to say goodbye to you afterwards. But to everyone else, thank you for watching. And remember, don't trust anyone over the age of 30.
Amen.